Really quick, if you haven't seen my most recent episode on Roxy, Publicist to the Stars, make sure you check that one out at some point, because on that episode I asked the question, is this the dumbest combo ever? But don't leave just yet, because shame baggin'. And I'm just gonna leave it at that, and hopefully that's the last impression on this episode. Anyways, let's jump into it. So, Zap Brannigan, Captain Rex Nebula, is a 2/2 human pilot employee that costs 1 red white. Yeah, let's all be honest, this is Zap Brannigan from Futurama, no question, and the the way that this card works very much is reminiscent of that fantastic character. Anyways, at the beginning of combat on your turn, target non-land permanent you control becomes a vehicle artifact until end of turn. Its base power and toughness are each equal to its mana value. It has crew 2 and crash land. Whenever this vehicle deals damage, roll a 6-sided die. If the result is equal to this vehicle's mana value, it deals that much damage to any target, then sacrifice this vehicle. So this card is incredibly flavorful for Zap Brannigan. I mean, I believe it's season 3, episode 5, but if I made a mistake on that, please correct me below in the comments. But yeah, one famous quote from that episode was, she's built like a steakhouse, but handles like a bistro. Okay, again, sorry, terrible impression. Anyways, Zap Brannigan, decided to fly a space restaurant and crash landed it. Which is kind of exactly what you're doing with this. You're saying, that thing is not a vehicle, but now it is a vehicle, and I am going to fly it. Or, drive it. And I very well might crash it because, well, Captain Rex Nebula, of course, has 2 power. That vehicle, which, is now a vehicle, has crew 2, so Captain Rex Nebula can pilot it, can crew it. And when we attack with that vehicle and it deals damage, it's bound to deal damage one way or another, right? In combat, we roll a 6-sided dice. If we happen to actually roll the actual number that is the mana value of the vehicle, we sacrifice it, we crash land it, and we ping something for a good amount of damage. Now, one thing I wish they would have made easier to do is actually to crash land it, because, this is Zap Brannigan we're talking about. Pretty much you're guaranteed to crash it, right? Now, obviously, we can work within these constraints and make it more likely that we actually crash the vehicle, which, again, is the complete goal of this deck. We just want to crash vehicles and chuck them at players, because, yeah, who doesn't want to have fun in that way? And of course, there are ways to make it more likely that we actually crash the vehicles, and ways to really take advantage of those quote-unquote vehicles, again, that we are crashing. One of those ways I'll mention right now is, if you can give that vehicle double strike. If you can give double strike to the vehicle, that is a good way to actually make sure you can at least hit twice if you don't crash it already. Now, really quick, if you are interested in building around Zap Brannigan, Captain Rex Nebula, whatever you want to call it, make sure you check out the card list link in the description below. It's got all the cards I'm talking about in this episode. And now with all that said, really quick, there's bound to be some amazing art alters of this. Nevertheless, now let's jump into it. First up, we would love to adjust our dice rolls as much as we can, so let's utilize cards like Barbarian Class and Wild Blade of Frontiers. Barbarian Class says if you'd roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice plus 1 and ignore the lowest roll. And Wild says the exact same thing, but on top of that, whenever you roll 1 or more dice, put a +1 counter on Wild Blade of Frontiers. Again, the important part is that we can roll 2 dice essentially instead of rolling just 1 and ignore the lower roll. Now, again, that might actually work against us if we were to build the deck in a way that we maybe have some lower mana value creatures or, other things that we were turning into vehicles. Because let's just say we rolled a 3 and a 5, we can't choose, to pick the 3. We have to ignore the 3 and we get the 5. So far, our newly minted vehicle has a mana value of 3. Yeah, even though we technically rolled 1, we really didn't, so we lose out on that opportunity to crash land. So with that in mind, the way that I would build around this commander is to ensure that having a higher dice roll is always going to be a good thing for us. Which essentially means no matter what our lowest roll is, again, if that's 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5, that the higher number is always going to be better. Which, okay, in a roundabout way means, we're really going to focus on non-land permanents with a mana value of 6. Because first off, again, if we stay consistent with that, and again, we work our way into getting these, kinds of cards out, and of course, there are ways that we can, maybe even copy them as well. I mean, in a roundabout way, you can actually turn Barbarian class even into a vehicle that is also an artifact, and then copy it with Sculpting Steel. Regardless, just another example, but yeah, the more and more of these effects we have in play, the more likely we are to roll the highest number we possibly can, a 6. And of course, again, by having higher mana value things that we can crash land, the amount of damage that we dish out is going to be the max damage again, which is 6. But of course, we've actually got ways to make that even more, so I don't know if I should say max damage, but yeah, you know what I mean. Regardless, now let's talk about some things that we want to turn into vehicles so that we can chuck them at our opponents. Now, the first kinds of cards that came to my mind were ones that, yes, do cost 6 mana, but also have ways to essentially cost less, like Oxida Golem, Enraged Giant, and Willforged Golem. Oxida Golem has affinity for mountains and haste, so yeah, I mean, if we have a good amount of mountains in play, this can cost a lot less. I mean, at a certain point in the game, it can even cost, 0. But let's just say, we've got 3 mountains, 3 plains in play. Just even costing 3, that's great, a lot cheaper than 6, and because, again, it has haste, we can swing with it right away for Zap Brannigan. Next up, how about Enraged Giant, a 4/4 giant with Improvise that has Trample and Haste, and Improvise, of course, means your artifacts can help cast this spell. Each artifact you tap after you're done activating mana abilities pays for 1. So now all of our other artifacts can help us actually get this out, and again, although it costs 6, we can actually pay a lot less for it. Or how about Willforged Golem, which has Convoke, which is somewhat similar to Improvise. Your creatures can help you cast a spell, basically tapping your creatures, pays for 1. So yeah, you can basically save on mana and get some cost reduction on these 6 mana non-land permanents. Speaking of which, next up we've got our Givian Phalnix. It's going to cost us 1 less to cast for each creature we control, so yeah, this 4/4 vigilant creature only can cost, as little as just a single white mana if we have 5 creatures in play. Or how about Embercleave? Again, it doesn't have to be a creature that we're turning into a, vehicle. It can be any kind of a non-land permanent. Embercleave has Flash, and it's going to cost 1 less to cast for each attacking creature we control. And on top of that, well, we can attach to attacking creature and also, give +1/+1 in Double Strike and Trample. But yeah, I mean, if we want to utilize Embercleave to swing at an opponent too, we can. Because, of course, as at Brannigan, you can use absolutely anything as a ship, apparently. And Crash Landing can actually help us cast Chandra's Incinerator for very cheap. It's a 6/6 that does cost 5 in a red, but it's going to cost X less to cast, for X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. Which, of course, basically by just Crash Landing one of our 6 mana non-land permanents, we can just, deal 6 damage, and then this just costs a single red mana. And of course, on top of that, this can help us out in another way as well. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to our creature or planeswalker that player controls. So by Crash Landing and pinging an opponent in the face, we can also take out one of their creatures or their planeswalkers. Another kind of a card I would consider, though, is actually a card that can actually get itself right back, even if we crash land it, like, Twilight Shepherd. It's a 5/5 with Flying and Vigilance, and it says, when it enters the battlefield, return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn, which is lovely, and that can help us out a lot, but also, this has Persist. Which means that when it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, it comes back into play with a -1/-1 counter on it. So this one, we can actually crash land twice. Speaking of which, there's Flair the Hatebound, a 4/2 with Undying, which is basically the opposite of Persist. Instead of it being, -1/-1 counters, it's +1/+1 counters. Regardless, we can get it right back when it dies, and says whenever it or other creature enters the battlefield from your graveyard, that creature deals damage equal to its power to any target. So even more pain, even more damage from Crash Landing. Or we can have something that actually gets other things back as well, like a Darkar Valkyrie, a 4/5 with Flying and Vigilance that has tap. When target creature other than Darkar Valkyrie dies this turn, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So with this out, we can just keep Crash Landing the same thing again and again and again. But of course, we can also get, everything out as well from our graveyard with Storm of Souls. It says return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Each of them is a 1/1 spirit with flying addition to its other types. Exile Storm of Souls. So yeah, basically get back all those, 6 mana value creatures. Sure, they're 1/1 flyers, but that doesn't really matter at all with this commander. And yeah, just go swing with them and Crash Land them again to also, chuck them again for 6 damage and whatever you want. So yeah, a mass reanimation spell like this can be fantastic once set up properly. And speaking of setting yourself up properly, well, you can also take advantage of crash landing creatures with cards like Sneak Attack, Perforos, and Quicksilver Amulet. Sneak Attack has pay a red, you may put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield, that creature gains haste, sacrifice the creature at the beginning of the next end step. Again, sacrificing a creature is no big deal. In fact, we have some creatures we can just get back, on their own or with something else, but also, we're planning on crash landing the creature anyways and sacrificing it, so sure, just take a creature out of your hand again, have Zap turn it into a vehicle, and then just, pilot it, attack, crash land it, have fun. So in a somewhat similar way, there's Perforos, which has pay 2 and a red. You may put a red creature card or an artifact creature card from your hand on the battlefield, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Oh, and also on top of that, Perforos gives other creatures you control of haste, which can be fantastic. Or how about Quicksilver Amulet? Pay 4, tap, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Again, basically, if we are putting a creature into play that has, 6 mana value, and, it's not one of those creatures that we talked about earlier that, can reduce its cost essentially, this can just be a great way to save on mana throughout the game. And of course, we can also do this at, instant speed as well, so we can put out a creature at flash speed on someone else's turn and, surprise them with whatever creature we're sneaking into play. Another sneaky thing to do, though, is actually utilize cards like Mimic Vat, Twin Flame, and Flame Shadow Conjuring. Mimic Vat says whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card. If you do, return each other card exiled Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard. And by paying 3 and tapping it, we create a token that's a copy of the card, exiled Mimic Vat, it gains haste, exiled, begin the next end step. Again, when we are making a token copy of the creature, we do get to keep that mana value. That mana value is still basically, on that creature token. So, we can crash land it and actually utilize that against an opponent. So, of course, in somewhat similar ways, we've got Twin Flame, which is a great one-off effect. Choose any number of target creatures you control. For each of them, put a token that's copy that creature on the battlefield. Those tokens have haste, exile them, begin next end step. And it's got a strive cost of 2 and a red, so if you want to target more than one creature, great. But of course, this is just a great way to essentially, crash land tokens that we're going to be losing anyways. So we also have Flame Shadow Conjuring, which is a great repeatable way as well. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under control, you may pay red. If you do, put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. That token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. Basically, swing with your copy and turn to a vehicle. Crash land it. Have fun. And speaking of fun, like I mentioned earlier, the max amount of damage, that one of our vehicles can put out when it's crash landed is 6, but with these kinds of cards, it can be even more. How about Gratuitous Violence? If a creature you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So 6 times 2, 12, that's a ton of damage. Basically can take out, probably any creature on the board, or, definitely planeswalkers on the board too. Or, just ping down an opponent's face. What's not to love about that? And of course, I will mention, there is a damage tripler out there too. That card's very expensive as well. And I guess I probably should have mentioned as well that Sneak Attack is very expensive too. But Gratuitous Violence, great card, very budget friendly. Or how about Dictate the Twin Gods? This one's a bit more risky, but you're Zap Brannigan, right? You're willing to take on that risk. Flash, if a source would deal damage to a permanent player, deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So obviously this affects you as well, but have fun. Or how about Insult and Injury? Insult says damage can't be prevented this turn. If a source you control deal damage this turn, deals double that damage instead. So this is a one-off, but it ensures that damage can't be prevented. So that can definitely come in handy. But now this episode is coming to a close. It's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Zap Brannigan, Captain Rex Nebula. Okay, everyone's going to call it Zap Brannigan. And I cannot wait to see alters of this card. But I really like the design of this commander. I do think they could have powered it up just a little bit. Like the crash landing. Again, I do think Zap Brannigan would crash land more than just 1 out of 6 times. Maybe what they could have done is, not care about the mana value when it comes to actually, equaling it when you roll that dice. It could just be, hey, if you roll an even, you sacrifice it and then crash land it. If you roll an odd, you don't. So it's like a 50-50 chance. Or, with Zap again, maybe it's just a, hey, if you roll a 6, you don't crash land it. If you roll anything else, you do. But, obviously, it is what it is. It's still a very interesting commander, a very unique commander at that. And there are ways if you build around this, again, with a thought-out strategy where you're like, okay, I'm going to try to get my, pieces out that, allow me to ensure I have higher dice rolls. And, I'm focusing, on maybe 6 mana value to ensure that I can get a lot of value out of that crash land. Nevertheless, I think many players are going to be really excited about this commander, and I'm sure there's going to be some very interesting builds around it. And if you are interested in some of the cards you saw on this episode, make sure you check out that link in the description below. And of course, make sure you also check out my other quick takes and spoilers from, Unfinity, and also, Warhammer just ended last week too, so Warhammer 2. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.